Beriont, who is vice chair of Hampton Select Board, is that correct? And also candidate for the Democratic nomination for Congress, Congressional District Number 1. Good morning, Carleigh.
Good morning, Kathy and Larry. It's wonderful to be here with you this morning.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. You have decided to run for, along with a number of other people, to run for the Democratic nomination for Congress here in CD1. Tell us what motivated you to make that leap.
Absolutely. So I have been a teacher for my entire adult life. And this past fall, after Donald Trump got reelected, I looked across the room at my students and I just thought, wow, we have really failed an entire generation. I was a student in 2016 when he was elected the first time. And I remember going into class the next day, and a lot of teachers and students had really puffy red eyes because they had been preparing themselves for the election of the first woman president. And instead, we got Donald Trump. And I remember asking my teachers, what do we do? And they were like, we don't know, but we assume that he has good people around him. They're going to mitigate the effects of this presidency. You know, things have been worse in the past. And I don't think any of us saw this second term coming. And that coupled with, you know, being on the select board, we had our reassessment in Hampton this past year. I don't know if you have had a reassessment recently, but if you have, your property taxes probably went up a lot. And for weeks and weeks, people came to our select board meetings and they explained to us just how hard it was for them to afford to continue to live in Hampton, right? People who've lived here their entire lives, who live in a mobile home maybe that they bought in the 80s and is now valued at $137,000. They don't own the land that it's on. They pay the fees to live there. And they have to make the decision now, do they pay their property taxes or do they pay for their heat in the winter? And that's a position that no one should have to be in. And I think that there's a role for government to play in fixing that. And so I'm really excited to run for Congress because, like a lot of people here, I spend a lot of my nights worrying about whether we're going to be okay. And this is one way that I see for me to help make a difference.
I understand that you do not do social media.
That's correct.
Well, good for you, because I keep hearing from people who are campaigning, you got to be on social media, but you've made that decision not to do that.
Absolutely. A lot of people will tell you, well, Carleigh, it's a necessary evil. And I know it's one of those things, and I'm not convinced it's the first. And so I've decided that democracy works a lot better offline. I don't know if anyone's been on social media lately, but it's kind of a cesspool with very few exceptions. I don't necessarily want people to hear about my housing policy or where I'm going to be amid like a lot of, you know, crazy accusations. And so I've made a website where people can find me, and I'm happy to see them elsewhere.
Yeah, what is your website? We should let people know where to find you.
Awesome. It's carleighberiont.com. So CarleighighBeriont.com. And I have a great blog on there so people can follow me as I hit the campaign trail.
Okay. So what do you think, what are your important issues? What are the issues that you are talking about on the campaign trail?
Absolutely. So there's a number of issues that we here in New Hampshire know are important, things like education and supporting our public schools. My daughter is going into second grade at Center School in Hampton, which is the oldest public school in the state of New Hampshire.
There's a big sign there that says,
right,
you are entering the, yeah, that's exciting.
Exactly. It's so funny because the kids there, you know, very few of the kindergartners and first graders really know how to read, but they all know what the sign says, and they're all so proud to be at that school. And my husband is a public middle school teacher, and so education is really important for us, but also just seeing how the high cost of education and the lack of support we get from the federal government and the state in New Hampshire drives up people's property taxes. And so thinking about how we can better fund our public schools and really direct our resources there is a great way to help deal with the affordability crisis. I also see a lot of people in New Hampshire who are cynical about what's going on, and that really scares me. New Hampshire people are usually so engaged and so active in their politics and really feel that they can make a difference because historically that's what they've been able to do. But the Free State movement has made that really hard for us.
Yeah, Free Staters have pretty much taken over the Republican Party, and they're the ones that have been pushing the school vouchers, and that must just really make your head explode.
Oh my goodness, it drives me absolutely nuts. The voucher program, like, not only should public money not be going to private schools, right? We know that when private schools get voucher money, they just raise the cost of tuition. We know that two, the majority of people receiving vouchers already have their kids in private schools. And we also know that public schools are so important for our democracy. It's where kids get to learn from people who are different than them. And I think that our public schools are amazing, and it breaks my heart that our state representatives had to make this decision last year, and the Democrats were just outvoted. And the Free State Movement, they helped advocate for this policy that took money that was allocated, $30 million for special education in New Hampshire, and they moved that money to the vouchers. So that is a lot of money that our schools are not going to be getting to do something that's really important, which is educating our students with disabilities. And it's also a place where our federal government has dropped the ball. And it just leaves that burden at our taxpayers' step to pay alone. And that's just too much for a lot of people right now.
Yeah, and public schools have to accept every student who wants to come, but private schools can, pick and choose. And if they say, we don't really want that, we aren't equipped to handle those students, so we're not going to accept them. So
Yeah, absolutely. And not only can they pick and choose their students, right? Everyone's like school choice. Well, what they mean is the schools have the choice over who they educate. And that is not okay. And they also have the choice over who works there. Like, these are schools that are allowed to discriminate against their teaching force because either they're single mothers or because they're members of the LGBTQ community. And that is not where our private or public tax money should be going.
Yeah, and I don't think our tax dollars should be going to religious schools. I just think it's unconstitutional. Don't we have a wall between church and state? I mean, we're supposed to.
Absolutely. And I mean, I'm a historian of American religion. So, of course, if you get me on that path, you're going to probably be here for a long time. But it's true, right? Like, church and state in the United States have a long history of being really closely entangled. And this is a step in a direction that I think is the wrong one.
Yeah, I did see that you got your PhD at Harvard in religion, and you have kind of delved into the role of religion in politics in American life, which is so interesting. I would love to sit around with you for a couple hours and talk about that. And maybe we'll just get to that a little bit. But first of all, I did want to talk about something I read in the newspaper. You said you want to bring the fight to Washington, but then you've also talked about building bridges and gaps between the parties. So, can you do both at the same time? I mean, can we bring the fight and can we reach across the aisle? What do you think?
Great question, Kathy. So last weekend, I took my kids to see the Smurf movie at the movie theater in Salem. And one of the lines towards the end of the movie really stuck with me. One of the Smurfs told the other Smurf, "Don't confuse kindness with weakness." And I do think that one of the things that I really bring to the table in this race is my experience at the local level. We all know that local government is nonpartisan, but we also recognize the ways in which partisan politics infiltrate every part of what we're doing. And in Hampton, I work really closely with Republicans because we all care about 90% of the same things. We agree that we want great investments in our public safety and infrastructure and services. We all want the trash picked up. We all want the sewage to be taken care of. And there's just a couple of items that we really disagree about. But what I think is important is that, I'm someone who beat two longtime Republicans, including a former Republican state rep, to get my seat. But I also am able to sit across the table and work with people because we don't start with our ideology. We start with our people in our community and what we can do to make life better for all of them. Mm-hmm. And that's what I want to see more of in Washington.
And you wrote an op-ed piece and this I found this in the Portsmouth Herald about the big beautiful bill. I think what do you call it, Larry? You call it
I call it the MAGA murder bill.
I call it the big ugly. So
I didn't come up with that. Somebody else did, but I repeat it.
It's a good one.
I amplify it.
So you take a stand on that bill that got passed, and can you tell us a little bit about how you came to to write the op-ed?
Absolutely. So I got my start as a high school teacher, actually, and so I've always been really interested in education policy. And one of the things that really surprised me, right, there are so many horrible things about Trump's big bad bill, which is what I've been calling it, that are exacerbated by what Chris Munn's, he's a state rep from Hampton, helpfully titled AAT's Awful Appropriations in her budget budget. So credit where credit is due to him.
Yeah, good one.
But, you know, we've seen how horrible the big bad bill is. We see that it takes away health care from millions of middle class and poor people, including kids and people with disabilities, in order to pay for tax cuts for really, really rich people. And, you know, this essentially kicks the can down the road for me and my kids because it is absolutely ballooning our national debt. But one of the things that wasn't really covered in a lot of the news coverage of the big bad bill was just how much it nationalizes voucher programs like the one we have here in New Hampshire. So it's not just our problem in New Hampshire, it is the country's problem now. And who better to take that on at the national level than someone who has already been taking it on at the state level?
You know, I just want to add one thing because I think that it gives a little more argument to this issue. Is that my husband and I sent our kids to Catholic schools, but we paid for them ourselves, and we're not wealthy, so we scrimped and we saved because we felt it was important, and we did it because it was important to us. We did not ask for taxpayers to help us. We did not want to destroy public schools. In fact, we support public schools because it is the basis of democracy. So we did without so that we could do that. And the thing is, you can do this. If you want to send your kids to private school, you can. And you don't need to destroy public schools in the process. And I just wanted to mention that because I think it's important. So you also have a whole lot of other items on your website about cost of living, for example. And how do you think we can go about making life affordable again for folks?
Oh, that's such an important question. And I think it really should be the priority of our government. And it devastates me that it's not a priority clearly for our state government here in New Hampshire or our federal government right now. I think, you know, when we think about how expensive things are, like I look at the cost of filling up my tank at the gas station and how much it costs to buy like corn or apples this year at Market Basket versus previously, how much diapers and pull-ups have gone up. But I also think we need to look holistically at the affordability crisis and think about the ways in which our government can help make housing more affordable, which will give people more money to spend in other places. And the place where I come at this from really has to do with childcare. So I have two amazing little kids, and I love them so much, and I hate raising them in a country that doesn't care about little kids or families or working parents. And in New Hampshire, it costs almost as much to send one kid to daycare as it does to send one kid to UNH. And I think that is absolutely absurd, right? It shouldn't cost as much to send your kid to a full college education by the time they get to kindergarten. And also, it kills me that the people who are working, doing this incredible job, taking care of our babies so that I can go to work and do my job, get paid like $16.25 an hour. So I think that, you know, we can raise the minimum wage. We can also make sure that our child care centers are really supported so they can pay people well. And also, I think that, you know, this is a place where we need more support for our families. And one of the things that I support is healthcare for everybody from birth until death. And this is another place where it's actually cheaper right now for us to have a single payer healthcare system because it would take the burden off our school districts and having to provide healthcare for their employees, which is one of the top 3 costs for school districts around the country. And that would have a direct impact on us lowering our property taxes and putting more money back into our pockets.
So how do we do that? How do we make it more affordable? Where does the money come from? And housing and you know, people elect, you know, city councilors and select people like you, thinking that you can do something about lowering their rents or lowering the cost of housing, but you can't do that.
I wish I could do that, but I can't do it alone. And right now, we just don't have the partnership that we need in Concord or in Congress. And I think that, you know, there's a lot that I would love to see our governments doing right now because the money that we spend on, you know, things like tax breaks for really, really, really rich people. Like everyone thinks, oh, I want to eventually be there. So like, I want to make sure that the going is good. I'm not talking about normal people or like most people. I'm talking about people who have wealth like beyond your wildest dreams, people who can rent out a European city for a week in the summer for a second wedding. Like, this is not regular people. And what's wild to me is we talk all the time about lowering taxes for rich people, right? Guess what? We can also raise them back up. It has been done historically. It's not unprecedented. It's possible. We just need people in government with a willingness to use the levers of power to make life better for the rest of us out here.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about billionaires, what is it? It's less than 1% of the population. It's just a tiny handful of people who are making vast amounts of money.
Yeah, and it may seem wild, but I do think that they should be paying their fair share, and that's not currently what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And it would make a huge difference in in budgets and for the rest of the world. Yeah, it's true. You also mentioned single payer health care. Let's talk about that.
Yes.
Is that Medicare for all, or how do you see single payer?
You know, Larry had the murder bill. That was a great title. I know you said you didn't come up with it, but I'm not always great with like snappy titles. I don't know if it's going to be called Medicare for all. What I want to make sure, though, is that everyone in this country gets health care coverage that starts when you're born and goes until you die. Mm-hmm. And I think that, you know, Medicare is a good example of a government program that has been in place for decades now and seems to be pretty effective overall. What I would love to see, though, is people getting health care that includes things like your eye care, right? People who need glasses. We all know Medicare doesn't cover that kind of stuff. Or your dental care, right? Teeth are part of your body. And so I would love us to invest in all of our people. And we know that giving kids, you know, good nutrition and giving them preventative health care saves us in the long run.
So I'm going to just go back to your background, which is really interesting. And you have a PhD, as I said, from Harvard in religion. And what brought you to that subject?
Oh, what a great question. So I, like I said earlier, was a high school teacher. After I graduated from college, I lived and worked in the Republic of the Marshall Islands, which for people who don't know is between Hawaii and Australia. And it's a country that's an ocean nation. So it's a series of islands and atolls spread across almost 1 million square miles of ocean, and it is a spectacular place to be. And it's also where the United States tested 67 nuclear weapons in the decade after World War II. And I never learned that history growing up. And when I moved to the Marshall Islands, I recognized that there's a lot of people there who are still dealing with the health consequences of the U.S. nuclear testing. And I thought to myself, is there a connection between me not knowing this history and these people not getting the health care that they need? And so I went back to graduate school and I got a master's degree in religion, ethics, and politics. And then I stayed on and I got a PhD to study what the impact is or the connection between this history and the lack of attention and health care and support that these people are getting in the present period. And that really got me involved and interested in politics and the role that, you know, faith groups have played historically in not just, you know, we see a lot from the religious right today, but also there's been a religious left throughout the United States history that was really involved in things like the abolition movement and the temperance movement and the Sunday school movement. And today we see them in Manchester. I was at the Jericho Walk outside the Norris Cotton Federal Building on Tuesday morning, and there were a whole group of like 40 different faith leaders there who are bearing witness to what is happening right now to immigrants in this country and aspiring Americans. And so every day I realize that there is a strong connection between, you know, activists who are driven by their faith and political consequences. And so that's something I've spent my life studying and teaching about. And it's also something that I feel is important to highlight right now.
You're teaching right now, aren't you?
Yes, although I am on leave this year. Sorry, students who are interested in taking my class.
Well, where were you teaching?
I teach a class at the Harvard Kennedy School, so I'm a part-time lecturer there. And I also was the assistant director of undergrad studies in religion at Harvard College. So I got to work with all those amazing college students.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds wonderful. And I bet you miss them.
I miss them so much, but they have been really awesome and so encouraging. They were my first group of supporters when I decided I was going to run for Congress. They were the people who, you know, college graduates digging deep, giving me $10 when I decided to launch my campaign. And it's been really awesome and important for them, I think, to see that they have a teacher who's willing to, you know, put her money where her mouth is and show up and fight for all of us at a moment when we all know we need it.
In the second hour today in our show, we're having someone who is going to come talk about the housing crisis, and we're going to talk about that. And I think minimum wage plays a role in this. I think there might be even more of a wage crisis than there is a housing crisis. So how do you feel about minimum wage? Is there a role for politicians to play in this?
Oh my goodness, yes. And this is one of the things that drives me just wild. Like, I got my first job when I turned 13. I worked at a fish store, and it's actually a terrible story because I broke my arm, and having a cast and working at a fish store is a recipe for smelling horrible for months and months on end. But yeah,
terrible.
it was not ideal. But in that job, I made, I think, like $5.25 an hour. And I remember like working and working and working and then getting my paycheck and being like, wait, what? This is all that I get as a result of all of this work and all of this stinky fish that I'm spending time with. And the fact that, in New Hampshire, minimum wage is $7.25, and it's been that way since 2009, because our minimum wage, we're one of 3 states that tethers the state minimum wage to the federal minimum wage, is obscene. Like, people don't realize that if you work all day, every day at $7.25 an hour, you're going to make $15,000 a year. Even if we raise it to the fight for 15, right? $15 an hour. You're going to make $30,000 a year. Everyone knows that $30,000 is not enough to live on in the state of New Hampshire. So I would fully support raising the minimum wage so that we can have a livable wage. People deserve to work and get paid fairly for that work.
I just wrote down a list of things that I'd love to just kind of throw at you, if you don't mind, and see. Let's start with something really controversial: Gaza and Israel. Well, I mean, you are going to be. I mean, if you get elected, this is going to be a big topic that you're going to have to deal with.
Absolutely, and I think it's so important. And one of the things that is really sobering to me is recognizing that if I get elected, I will not take office until January 2027. And I'm just thinking about how much has happened since October 7th, 2023, and how much could happen between now and January 2027. And I think, anybody reading the stories or seeing the images coming out of Gaza absolutely has their heart broken, right? I'm a mom. I see these kids out there who either have lost their parents or they've lost their limbs, and they're trying to get food and they're getting shot. And I am horrified. I am horrified by it. And, I don't know what the situation will be like when I have power, but I do know that I will do everything in my power to stop it, because I don't think that what's happening right now is laying the foundation for a peaceful Middle East. I'm someone who still believes that there's a possibility for a 2-state solution. I would love to see Israel have a state and be able to be secure in the Middle East. And I would also love to see Palestinians have self-determination. And I would love to see them be able to rebuild. And I don't see that happening right now. And it concerns me that we don't have people who are taking this more seriously in government.
Yeah, and I think we've always, for so long, it's been a tradition to support the two-state solution, and now it feels like that's even kind of running through our fingers too, or slipping through our fingers, and there's a prime minister in Israel who is not interested in a two-state solution. It seems like we're kind of running up against a great big huge wall.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's overwhelming, right? Like, this is one of so many things that are making life hard and making it scary. And I think that what we need right now is people in government who not only are thoughtful about sitting down at the table and crafting the complex policy solutions we need to really adequately address the issues like immigration, right? The situation in the Middle East that are facing so many of us. But we also need people in government who have moral courage and who are willing to imagine a better world. And I think, being a mom with little kids, I know that my kids are going to grow up in a world that I'm helping to shape. And I want that world to be one where we can dream that the kids in Palestine have a
ICE.
Not just the stuff you put in your drink.
Yeah. I wish it
It's one of those things where, previous associations, right? Like with pandemic or COVID, it's like a lot of our reference points have changed a lot in the last few years.
True. A simple word like ice. Yeah. Would you like ice with your drink?
Sends
Yes.
a chill.
No. Wait. Right. this whole issue of immigration has kind of evolved to something that is horrifying. That people are getting rounded up on the streets and kidnapped and disappeared and taken to horrible places where there's torture, and I can't believe this is actually happening here.
It's happening here. Yeah, I think that's a really important thing for us to just like sit with for a second. It is happening here, and it is happening now in all of our communities, and it is horrifying. I think that in terms of immigration, like this is a place where we've seen Republicans and Democrats absolutely drop the ball for decades. We do need some type of immigration reform that enables us to control our borders and provide people who aspire to be Americans with a way to do that. And my students look at me with their mouths open when I tell them that in the early 2000s, I remember a time when immigration reform was a Republican issue, that Republicans supported this. And they say, there's no way. And I say, no, it's true. Like this has been something in recent memory that we can draw from, and we can do this again. Like as a country, we can create a pathway to citizenship for the people who are here. But right now, we need to stop disrespecting due process. We need to make sure that people who are here, who are being kidnapped and hauled off to who knows where by ICE, doing what? I mean, those people deserve their day in court just like anybody else. And the fact that people are being kidnapped while showing up for their asylum hearings or on their way to work is reprehensible.
Yeah, and during the last presidential election, there was a bill actually put forth by a very conservative senator from Oklahoma that would address the immigration. It was a comprehensive immigration reform bill, and it had a lot of support. But candidate Donald Trump decided he didn't want that subject taken off the campaign. So he instructed the Republicans not to vote for it, and then it just got killed.
Absolutely. And that bill,
it's just heartbreaking.
Yeah, that bill was far from perfect, but it's like we have a government right now where we have a president who is absolutely getting in the way of anything good happening. And like my opinion is that the government's not supposed to be making life more difficult for people in this country. It's supposed to be helping people, giving them the foundation they need to build beautiful and happy, thriving lives for themselves. Mm-hmm. And I think this is just one of many areas where I'd be really excited to get down and to get to work.
We kind of talked about labor unions and everything briefly before we went on air, and you seem to have a connection there. You've been involved with unionizing on college campuses, maybe?
Absolutely. Solidarity forever. Yeah, bread and roses. So I helped found the UAW Local 5118, which was the Harvard Graduate Student Worker Union. And, this was something that I was really interested in based on my husband's experience with union organizing and my own background. But as soon as I got to Harvard and Donald Trump was elected, I felt this betrayal, not just from the country, but also from an institution that, seemed to be supporting things, but was also quashing our nascent unionization movement. And I just saw how many graduate students were struggling, making $25,000 a year, teaching all of these classes, in a lot of cases having to support dependents and family members. And, I think that graduate student workers are workers too, and they deserve a living wage. And so I was really happy to be outspoken and part of that fight.
Okay. Birthright citizenship. I'm a citizen because I was born here. I mean, does this, it's something that's in the Constitution, and nevertheless we have a president who wants to get rid of it.
Yeah, and this is where New Hampshire and the ACLU has been so out in front, right? Like we've seen the victory in this case, or at least the injunction, coming right here from New Hampshire, because we have people in this state and across the country who recognize that taking away a right is wrong. And I think that birthright citizenship is a really special thing about the United States. It doesn't exist almost anywhere else in the entire world. This is part of what makes us special, and it's another thing we need to keep fighting for, right? Something we didn't think we'd have to fight for, due process, birthright citizenship. And yet here we are, and so therefore I guess we have to go fight for these things. And that's an exciting thing to be able to do.
Yeah, it's funny. It seems to me, you talk about the Republicans were the ones who wanted immigration. reform. And it also seems to me that the Republicans were the ones that have been yelling about the Constitution for as long as I remember. And now all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, who cares? Yeah, it's in the Constitution. Doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, and the Constitution is like an incredible document, right? And it has so much power because all of us have collectively decided to believe in it, right? We have collectively decided we want to build a more perfect union. We have collectively decided that we want to respect the rights of minorities and civil rights, and we want to have a country where people can live freely. And it's just, every day frustrating to see the ways in which we have almost an entire political party whose aim right now seems to be dismantling that. And I think that we need to hold them accountable. I think we need to make sure that everyone who serves in government and takes that oath of office to uphold the Constitution, like I did when I was sworn in for the select board in Hampton, is able to do that. And I think a lot of people whose job that is right now are also feeling afraid, right? They're feeling the pressures to perform in the ways that our federal government is asking them to. And that's not fair.
Reproductive freedom.
We need to have it.
Sure, to the point. Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of like one of the freedoms and rights that you're talking about. All of a sudden, they're disappearing.
Yeah, and like Kathy, going back and forth with like just this laundry list of things, it's terrifying to me to think like in the world that I grew up in, like we had due process, we had birthright citizenship, we had reproductive rights, and we didn't really spend too much time thinking about them.
Right.
We were fighting for new and better and more exciting things. And the world that my daughter is growing up in, these are all things that are being debated. And that means that we need, as Democrats, to show up more strongly than ever and to make sure that every single person in this country, regardless of their party, has access to these freedoms because they have been hard fought and hard won.
Are you going door to door in Hampton? It's a whole district. You must be going door to door all over half the state.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I haven't quite gone door to door over the whole state yet, but I have been showing up around town and holding what I'm calling district dialogues, where I ask people, what do you wish politicians knew about your experiences? And I ask that question because, I've been in New Hampshire for a long time. I've been in a lot of those rooms with politicians, and no politician has ever asked me that. And I do think that our politics would be better and our policies would be stronger if we had politicians that really showed up and listened rather than showing up and telling people what they're going to do.
Yeah. So you asked that of your constituents? You've been asking that? So what are people saying? What do they want? How are their lives being affected?
I think that, we see people who are struggling right now in different ways. My daughter is in first grade and her best friend lost their house this year. And, for a lot of people who are able to show up at these forums, they have concerns that maybe are somewhat different from the immediate concerns of people like my daughter's friend's family. But they're still really worried about their friends and neighbors. They are worried about ICE. They're worried about our environment. They say, hey, since Donald Trump got elected, everything is a 5-alarm fire. But the really big 5-alarm fire that we've been talking about in the background of all of this is our environment, right? Yeah. The air that we breathe in New Hampshire, we're especially worried about the water that we drink because of the PFAS situation. And I also think that a lot of people are recognizing, these issues are all connected because we are all connected. When someone doesn't have health care, that hurts me. When someone doesn't have clean drinking water, that hurts me. And in a lot of cases, we're recognizing that we are the people who no longer have access to these things. And so we're going to have to fight together to get them.
A lot of things we've taken for granted. Yeah. And all of a sudden we're faced with a battle for them. And, and everyone has to step up. Everyone has to speak up.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Democracy is a participatory sport, and it's great because you're going to get a participatory trophy. Everyone gets a trophy for participating. You get to have your civil rights. It's great. It's important. And it really matters right now more than ever. But like we say in union organizing, you don't get what you don't fight for. And so I really want to encourage people to get up and fight. If they see something that's wrong, they should say something. Politics isn't something that happens in a dark, closed, cold room somewhere. It's something that happens with all of us in our lives, whether that is helping your neighbors or showing up to vote in municipal elections or knocking doors or making postcards or writing postcards. We all have a role to play right now. And if it feels too big and scary, come find me and I'll help find something for you that fits your talents and your time.
Yeah, and we have to make it clear that if you call your congressional representatives or you call your senators, it makes a difference. They actually listen. They pay attention to who calls, and they keep a little tally of what their constituents are saying. So, yeah, it is important to reach out. Even if you think, my senator, I agree with everything she says. Nevertheless, give her a call.
Absolutely. I'm sure that, our politicians don't often get super fawning praise for the decisions they make. So if you do see someone your local leader likes, I always know that, in Hampton, when we got a sign down to the beach that noted that it was accessible for wheelchairs, and I worked really hard to get that sign up on the seawall. People noticed that and they said thank you, and I really appreciated it. So definitely reach out when things are hard. But what's most important is that you stay in contact. That conversation matters. Right. That relationship matters. And so I think that we should encourage people to just feel like their representatives are representing them, right? That they're there for them and they want to hear from them in good times and bad.
I did write down climate here as well.
Yeah.
Did you, Larry, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to. I want to give the congressional switchboard.
Yeah.
This is the only number you need to reach our senators and Congress people. It's 202-224-3121. 202-224-3121. And you just say, I'd like to speak to Jean Shaheen or Maggie Hassan, Chris Pappas, whatever. And, they, just to echo what you were saying, Kathy, they do pay attention to what you say. And, it's easy. I mean, usually what I do is I come up with the topic that I want to say, like I think we should not be, like the whole thing on Gaza.
Yeah.
Okay. Bernie Sanders had a resolution in the Senate recently to stop, it would stop the U.S. government from sending offensive weapons to Israel related to what's going on in Gaza. And so I called our two senators and I said, I'd like you to vote for this. And one did, Jean Sheen, and the other didn't, Maggie Hassan. But they pay attention.
They do.
So
yeah.
It's 202-224-3121.
And no one gives you a hassle in case you're like scared to call the senator office. No, a nice person is
nice
there.
Young people.
Nice young people.
Right.
And they'll just say, what would you like me to relate to the senator? And then you tell them, they go, okay, that's lovely. Have a nice day. It's all very easy and no one gives you a hard time.
That's right. For better or for worse, it probably won't be your senator who's answering the phone. So definitely keep that in mind as well when you relay your feelings to the nice staffer on the other side.
I want to emphasize they track this stuff.
They absolutely do.
Yes,
and it's true at the state level as well. So people going onto the general court website, if you have thoughts for your state representatives or you're upset about vouchers right now, this is a place where you can definitely make a difference. We have 400 state representatives in New Hampshire, and they are all here to represent you and to listen to your thoughts and your concerns, your hopes and your dreams. So feel free to go on that general court website and find your state reps and, get a chance to meet them, because you actually could probably sit down with a state rep and have a good conversation, which is really exciting about New Hampshire.
So I've asked a lot of my questions. Is there something, Carleigh, that I haven't asked you, or something you'd like to get out to our listeners about you or your campaign?
I would love to say that, our campaign has been so much fun. I have been so fortunate to be able to listen to the hopes and the dreams and the fears and the anxieties of the people in this district. And I want them to know that I don't know if we're going to be okay, but I'm going to fight every single day to make our communities a better place for us all to live. And if you want to get involved, please come down to carleighberiont.com, CarleigHBeriont.com, and find a way to get involved, whether that's writing postcards or helping make buttons or knocking doors or chipping in a few bucks. I think we can all make a real difference here. And before I leave, I do want to ask Kathy and Larry the question, which is, what do you wish politicians understood better about your experience?
I have granddaughters, and I want them to be able to make choices for themselves, for their families, for their health, for their bodies themselves without government getting in the way. That's probably number one right now. I also think there is a huge wage discrepancy in our country, and I think we need to do what we can to make life more fair for working folks. Larry.
Yeah, I echo what Kathy said. That's all good stuff. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I totally agree. This is like the Jim and Marjorie of New Hampshire Seacoast.
Jim and Marjorie, yes, exactly. Carleigh, this has been lovely talking to you. Is there anything else we need to do that we've talked about your website, and that's carleighberiont.com.
Yep.
And don't look for Carleigh on Facebook.
No, you can find everything in one place. We've made it much easier for you, so you don't have to scour the web and get on Twitter and maybe have to hear from Nazis before you can hear from me. You can find me at carleighberiont.com or out and about in your community.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Carleigh Beriont. She is running. She's at the moment vice chair in charge of the Hampton Select Board and candidate for the Democratic nomination for Congressional District Number 1. Carleigh, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Carleigh.
We're going to take a short musical break.